better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it'll change your life.
Howdy, Rob.
Howdy, Matt. How's it going?
It's going well, and welcome Patreon listeners. Thank you for supporting the show and letting us do another bonus episode.
This is a follow-up, a build upon, an extension of the episode that we did on dice mechanics, because Matt and I love talking about nerdy stuff like dice and probabilities and systems. We're gonna dig in deep and do a little bit of a dice workshop. Talk about a couple of systems that we've mathed out and see what we can't do with them.
And I think it's super fun to talk about like creating your own dice system. You can like go to another system, modify it, start from scratch. Hopefully the taxonomy on the Patreon blog will let you know here's a million different systems you can look at if you find like a general area you want to start on. But I also think when you're mathing things out or drafting a system or hack for your play at your own table, you can only go so far. So eventually you got to like play with people and then be like, all right, then we're going to come back to this. But it is like a lot of work to get to that point. You just can't do it all.
At some point, you got to let the rubber hit the road or the dice hit the table, as it were. And yeah, it's important to get feedback, because there's a lot. I mean, you got to play with people, right? Because one, there's things you're going to miss, right? You need outside input, but also there are certain elements of games, of rolling dice, that you just aren't going to be able to fully understand or realize until you see them in action. There's just, there's certain qualitative elements that, are only going to come out in play.
I've definitely like read through certain indie, really small print indie games or like really old role-playing games from the 80s or 90s, and you look at the rules and you're like, I don't know if anyone played this before this hit the presses.
Yeah.
And, that's fine if like that is your, if you are a very small creator, but eventually, like, even if it's for your own table, you gotta stop theorizing and planning at some point and start playtesting. So both of us are like, I think, approaching that point where, okay, we're just like a couple of final checks and then we'll play test this, and then of course probably rewrite the whole thing. But we wanted to talk about some dice mechanics we've been working on.
Listeners, what's funny about this is that Matt and I both had these dice mechanics sitting in our pockets, and we had not talked about them with each other at all, even though we talk at least once every week for an hour. So this is exciting. This is an exciting moment.
I would have been disappointed in you if you didn't have a
I know, right?
Dice system that's just unused, ready to go.
Yeah. We both have something that we've been kicking around that I think is ready for some level of playtesting. And well, then at some point there will be a playtest of these things. But not currently. This is just dice. Yeah. This is just mechanics.
So where do we want to begin? Do we want to, I think it would probably be best if we go back and forth without, spending half an hour talking about one thing.
Yeah. But first let's talk about the big questions. And you wrote down what are we trying to accomplish here? What is a good system look like? So, and how are we judging? Does this work? Does this like not work? What are our big questions about about these dice systems?
Yeah, I think the first that I'm always asking is, how do the mechanics support the fiction, the drama, the story, the gameplay, the action, and it's going to be different for every system. There's no right answer here, but I am usually looking for a set of dice mechanics that in some way enhance or speak to the type of action and role playing that goes on at the table.
Yeah, and this is the most important thing. We're always talking about this, but some people don't need any mechanics at all, or barely any to, to have a great game. But the reason why we roll dice is to facilitate or improve or enhance that gameplay, that narrative, to help guide or, you know, direct the story. One of, in addition to, how do they support it? One of my primary motivations, goals, is to make this easier. I play with a lot of not experienced role or tabletop role players. They are, they're good players. They understand rules, but they do not have decades of rolling dice and pretending to be other people, and so they get stuck sometimes. And so something I'm always looking for with any game, any system, but especially the mechanics, is to sort of like ease that
Mhm.
passage a little bit, which is also good for groups that are experienced. But this is, I think, to me, that's one of like my primary motivators with all RPG mechanics, but especially with rolling the dice, is it simple? Does it make it easier for my players to do the thing that they enjoy doing? Does it, sort of grease the skids?
Yeah. For me, I'm not really looking for just like the most easy or straightforward system. I'm just looking for something that like logically makes sense for the game I'm trying to play. And so this is a game that I've talked about on our Patreon episodes before, Levelers, about Communard, which monster hunters that go from village to village. They solve a mystery, and then it ends, usually in a big fight with some fantastical creature or like evil wizard or something like that. And I've run 2 short campaigns of this before. One with a quick hack and simplification of the dogs in the vineyard system, which is what this started as. 2 with a quick hack of the 5th edition system. And I liked both of those for certain reasons. I didn't really like the narrativist kind of big roles of dogs in the vineyard. 5e is just it just doesn't stretch itself far enough to support like really big powerful heroes that like can do amazing things. And so I want something like that, something where the heroes feel very big and powerful. There's that scene in the Witcher where he kills like 10 guys. Like it's nothing. He does not break a sweat, right? But then of course when he fights a monster, then it's like, ooh, will he survive? And I want that kind of feeling from a fantasy action thing. So I definitely like looked at a lot of like superhero games as opposed to fantasy role-playing games from my end.
I played in your 5 or one of your playtests of the 5th edition hack, and it was
Yeah.
fun. And you're right though that it's hard to feel powerful, even if you've got a bunch of extra abilities in 5th edition. You did a good job of adding stuff so that our low level guys felt cool, but 5th edition doesn't really support it. Exactly like you said, you don't get those hero moments all that much. My system, I'm still working on a lot of the specifics. It's kind of a synthesis of 2 things that I was working on. It sprang fully formed like Athena from Zeus's head.
Uh-huh.
I was noodling, but the working conceit and title is, it's called Trinity, a game of ordnance and orthodoxy, and it is about being gun wielding priests in a post apocalyptic godless wasteland. And
Ooh.
it I got really really fixated, and we'll talk about this in the dice, on the number 3, and having everything be sort of like
Okay.
a triple or a multiple of 3, having there be 3 main stats, 3
Wait,
main
wait, wait. Before we
classes,
get to
all
the
that.
numbers, tell me more about the play in the Godless Wasteland. Is it
So the play in the godless wasteland is you are trying to advocate for and build your faith, your orthodoxy, right? And you do so, sorry, this is going to sound awful, but like you do so with violence. Like you by killing and fighting and destroying monsters and defeating those that are opposed to you, you make your beliefs more powerful, and you have a chance to bring about your own god. is
Ah,
basically like the
give birth to God through violence.
basically.
Have you been reading like Kill 6 Billion Demons or something?
I have.
Rob?
That's not where this came from, but
It's just
I am
in the back there.
But it's definitely a contributor. That is definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Trench Crusade?
Yes, I Trench Crusade came out or started getting popular when I was like starting to think about this, and Trench Crusade is something different. But I would be lying if I said I didn't love the like aesthetics and ideas behind Trench Crusade and consider it an inspiration as well.
Readers, let us know if you ever want us to do a bonus or normal episode on miniature wargaming, especially narrative miniature wargaming like Trench Crusade and other things. Anyway, awesome. Okay, so so like you want to build faith, and it's and the number 3 is holy. Okay.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing. And it's not just through violence, but part of, to get back to like my motivations, I do want it to be contested, conflicted. I want there to be a lot of conflict in the game. And it doesn't have to be just guns, it could be lots of other things, but I want there to be a lot of opportunity and need for your faithful to be tested in one way or another. And you roll lots of dice, or you roll dice a lot of times to see things happen, to challenge people. And I want it to move quickly, right? I want it to be dynamic and fast paced, and that was 3 is holy, 3 is important, and that's those are the two sort of starting points, and everything branched out from there.
Okay, so to summarize for yours, you want it simple and straightforward, where people who are stupid have no problems with it. Sorry, your friends are not stupid.
Well, sorry.
they want to think about it too much, right?
Yes.
And you want the 3 number to be holy, to like really think about, are you acquiring faith, right?
Right.
Was this it's not so much did I succeed or fail, but did like fate, the heavens bless this roll?
Have I been touched by the divine? Were my actions blessed? And I don't want to jump ahead, but like, I am anticipating some concerns, and they are correct, that like, maybe it's not all that simple what I have drawn up, because the other thing that I really like is I really like when numbers work together nicely. So I really, I like adding numbers up, and I'm like, look, that's a 9, or look, there's, triples on the dice. I like those sort of like pleasant symmetrical moments. So for me, the system has a little bit of that, and that may be in conflict with the simple, easy to pick up part. But I'm hoping I can split the difference.
Yeah. Okay. So we've introduced the worlds and the play we're trying to create here with these mechanics. Where do you want to go to next? The basic dice working, or what are we going for in our gamist, more narrativist kind of way? Where do you want to go next?
We should do one more like big picture thing, which is a gamist, narrativist, simulationist. What are we trying to accomplish with the dice? And
I was just putting this here to be like, are your roles like telling a fiction first sort of move, or are they trying to simulate probabilities in like as a physics engine? Are they somewhere in between?
Right.
Are they really gamey? Do you have like lots of points to spend and stuff like that, playing like an action board game? Where do you, these are broad descriptors that are not really true.
I think that unfortunately GNS theory has probably done more harm than good at this point.
Yeah, but let's not get sidetracked.
Yeah, sorry. But it's a useful way to think about it. And for my part, I think mine is actually a little bit gamist. It's these are game things that happen because they're fun. They're not trying to simulate with precision anything. But I'm, personally, I like things that are on the somewhere in the simulationist gamist spectrum. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking for something in that happy medium that a lot of games are striving for, and either succeeding wildly or missing the mark between simulationist and narrativist outcomes. I like the complication that a lot of narrative games have introduced. However, I want something a little more straightforward, a little chunkier, smaller chunks where roles happen more often. And it does feel like you are doing cool things instead of one role and then telling a story. One of the things so I've played this game, short campaigns. Between the short one was 4 sessions, the long one was 8. Before, with 2 completely different systems, and what I realized is that I wanted to shorten the narrative disconnect or dissonance between players and characters in that sort of old school style. Like, I want players to make tough moral choices, but like I don't need a fiction first mechanic for them to make those tough moral choices. So I do want player strategy and character strategy to be fairly aligned, and that's not something you get with a really fiction first game.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry, last big picture question before we get
Sure.
into the nitty gritty is like, how do the players and or the GM engage with the dice mechanics? What's the touch point?
Great question. I think
yours.
If I wanted to, you're welcome. If I wanted to make players feel like they are really powerful characters, I would say in a lot of cases, until shit really hits the fan, like the biggest limitation for them accomplishing their goals is just like themselves. Are they going to burn through all of their magic blood resources, magic spirit resources that they have? And they can and accomplish the goal. They can do what they want. And if they want to succeed on something that's not almost impossible, they probably can, until they're like out of resources, right? So I really wanted players to engage and be able to take roles and say, I'm a magic superhero, I succeed. So I wanted some kind of dice manipulation or meta currency points to spend on the dice. You'll see where I ended up, but yeah, that's how I wanted players to engage.
I guess in a sense, well, I'm always inspired by Blades in the Dark, but that was, I think, an inspiration for this, because I want the dice, or the players, to engage with the dice as a form of like a risk reward. I want to encourage risk taking, and the dice, rolling them comes with a risk, but comes with potential, extreme rewards. So they want to take action, they want to take risks, and they want to roll the dice to see what happens. This contradicts a lot of games and a lot of things that we've talked about, which are like, don't roll dice for lots of things because you can just do them, which I agree with as a principle. I've in the document that I've written up for this, like, your guy doesn't need to roll the dice to put his shoes on, but you should be doing things that require you to roll dice as often as you can manage it. You should be taking risks and challenging yourself, and
you need to test your faith. Otherwise, how do you know if it's real?
That's how I hope the players to want to engage with the dice.
Okay, I like that. A system that encourages players to roll the dice often, not because you need to roll the dice for everything, but because you want to do risky things all the time. Okay. It sounds like a lot of the priests with guns in this wasteland will be dying.
Yes.
Or something. Yeah, and that's part of the fun of the game.
Part of the fun, theoretically, yeah.
Heaven has judged you.
Found you wanting, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's describe the actual mechanics now that we've oriented ourselves.
Yeah. Tell us about yours, Matt, starting with just like the rolling. Like, what have we got? What kind of bones we got in our mitts?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious where I started on this, which was the Year Zero engine, which I've had a lot of fun with in Vaesen, which is the other inspiration for mechanically this game, along with, Dogs in the Vineyard. It uses a D6 pool system with arbitrary kind of symbolic meanings. You can use regular D6s. I found that you can buy blank 6-sided dice for like $15 for 100, which is really fucking cheap. And I put stickers on them. But you could just use a D6. 2 through 5 are meaningless. 6s represent an uncomplicated or uncontested success. A 1 represents a mixed success or a success with consequence, and everything else is failures. You build a pool based on right now I'm still using an attribute and skill system that may be cut entirely before the next playtest later this summer, but we'll see. So you build a pool that's usually between 3 and like at the top end, like 8, 9, or 10. You roll the dice, and you can either choose to keep your 6s, which represent the number of successes you got, or your 1s, which represent the number of successes with consequences. And if one is higher or one is lower, you can choose the one you want. So maybe you rolled a pool of 8 dice and you got 3 1s and 2 6s. You could decide to keep the 6s instead to avoid the consequences. And same as the Year Zero engine, you have a resource that you can burn, which is essentially the same as your hit points, to re-roll the dice. So in a lot of situations that are challenging, or in combat, for example, the biggest enemy to you is going to be yourself as you burn through your hit points to just accomplish what you want, which is like, I kind of think what I want as the feel. I like that. Yeah. Okay. That's the basic ideas. We can get into some specifics that spiral off of that.
Yeah. Before I tell you about mine, this is many things that I love. I love big fistfuls of dice. What Matt and I both love rolling a bunch of dice. I
love Shadowrun, rolling a huge amount of dice.
If only Shadowrun were a better game, it would be a lot easier to play. But
that's what I was thinking about Shadowrun. I was like, okay, it's a simple 1/3. What if we made it a little more complicated? And there's a lot of consequences from this by differentiating between the 5s and 6s you roll in Shadowrun.
Yeah, I like this too. I like that. Well, I like your sticker idea, but even so, using 1s and 6s is it's an innovation. That I don't know any other systems that do opposite ends of the dice. But I like that. It's easy.
Yeah, those are I found in rolling, those are the easiest ones to pick out.
That's literally what I was just. Yeah, I was like, this makes it very easy to tell it right away. I have this many of this many of that. How do I decide? I also, this has come up in a couple systems we've talked about recently, but I like you have to choose your level of success, or, potentially take a consequence, but have a chance of doing something better. The influence of Year Zero is obvious, and I approve because it's great. I think this is neat.
So I mean, I think too, like, hangups are like, there's already 2 decision points in the dice roll. The decision on to push, so burn your hit points or take harm, to re-roll non-6s and 1s. So that's one decision point. And then on some rolls, not everyone, you might have a decision on whether you want to keep 6s or keep 1s, either take a uncomplicated or a complicated success. 2 decision points per dice roll. That does not lend itself to kind of fast, dynamic, heroic combat. So that's something that in playtesting I will be looking at.
I mean, I think you put this in your notes, but I mean, you could one option might be that, instead of they choose, it's just 6s or 1s, whichever is higher. That's the, and then the only decision is to push, whether you want to push for like a different outcome. That, like, to me, I don't think it's two is too many decisions, but that is something that I would be curious to see how it shakes out in playtesting. Like, do players struggle with that decision?
The other like thing with that is when you look at the probabilities, and probabilities of this can be a little complicated if you think about the math of like rerolling. It's not incredibly complicated, but it's more complicated than most systems. The chances of, for example, since keeping uncomplicated successes sixes is always better than keeping uncomplicated successes. So if they're even or sixes or higher, you would never make that choice. The choice of keeping ones when they're higher than sixes might not come up often enough for this really to be an interesting choice. And so I'm going to just like play test it to see whether it's even a choice I want to make my players to make. Some alternatives could be like, oh, actually, you can, if you choose both sixes and ones, you can add them together, and that makes it a complicated success or something.
Oh, interesting. That might, yeah.
Which would change my probability curves immensely, which is the only problem.
You'd have to rework the math, but that's simpler and adds an interesting complication, right? Do you take the ones so that you can succeed on the roll, but then you have consequences?
One thing I really like about the system is setting target numbers is going to be very easy. It's almost always one, and then like as I've written up like stats for like monsters, like some monsters are 2 and some are 3 in their target numbers, right? And that means they're much, much harder than ones. And that's all I'm ever really going to change as the DM. And players will be adding or subtracting, or mostly just adding dice to their pool based on circumstantial advantages, help from other players, etc. And then if you beat that target number, they have like a little list of things they can immediately spin the dice to do, right? You can spin the dice to ask me another question. You can spin the dice to inflict another level of damage, right? You can spin the dice to do it and move the scene forward in an unexpected way, right? Or give a success to someone else.
Yeah, that's a good point about the just thinking about it. Just setting difficulty is simple here, right? Because the numbers don't go up that high, so you have a good sense based on how many dice they're rolling, what's reasonable.
One of the problems with the year zero engine is because only sixes are successes. You can really you don't feel very powerful, which is great. Like in Vaesen, you're not supposed to be like, you don't have any superpowers beyond that of a regular human, other than you can see these things. In Alien, you're like, you're like a plumber who works on a starship. You're trying to run away, in Tales from the Loop, you're a kid. You're not supposed to, they're not good systems at feeling powerful.
And this is the only thing that gives me pause about yours, which is the same problem as the year zero engine. And it's not insurmountable, but it always sucks to roll a bunch of dice and nothing happens, or nothing of consequence happens. And that is workable. It's a thing, especially if you're rolling a whole lot of dice and you don't get a single 6 or 1. But with the thing is, like with pushing, the chances of that happening are so.
You hit 90% at a 6 dice pool, which is not a big dice pool as the game is currently set up. So with pushing, you can you hit that level where players feel like it should be a guaranteed success. It's not, but 90% is pretty good, right? And I that's kind of where I think in a lot of systems you like your curves to level off at. Mine doesn't, but that's okay too. All right. Do we want to? Yeah. Okay. Big picture for mine. Let's go back to yours.
Okay. So the Trinity involves rolling, you guessed it, 3d6. I went back and forth on a bunch of different things.
Not 3d3?
I did think about 3D3, and then I was like, that's a bunch of stupid
No,
math, and
that's
there's
stupid.
literally no
You
reason
could buy
to do that.
some Zachi dice.
Yeah. But yeah, it rolls a core test roll of 3d6, and you use this for everything. And success is determined not by how high or low, but do you fall within a range. So anything between 8 and 12 is some kind of success. 8, 11, and 12 is a conditional success or a success with consequences. Triples and the number 10 are basically an unconditional success. And then 9, of course, is a exceptional success, miraculous success, divine intervention, whatever. And the probability on this works out mostly the way that I like it to. Like you'll succeed around 60% of the time, like slightly less, which I think feels good for players. You want it to be a little bit better than 50%. And then go ahead, Matt.
Oh no, that makes sense. Just to summarize, yeah, if you roll lower, a 7 or a lower, it's a failure. If you roll a 13 or higher, it's a failure, unless you roll triples, in which it's an unconditional success. 8 through 12 is a conditional success, except for 10 and 9.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a better way to put it. So there's also, like in Matt's system, there's a couple of ways to adjust the roll. There's a character resource. I've just called it's zeal or energy or something that you can use to reroll one die. And then there's a heresy mechanic where you can add an additional black dice, because 4 is a heretical number. And this has narrative and character consequences, but can be helpful in reaching that 9 number. You could choose to take the heresy die or not, and it's basically advantage. It's an advantage mechanic, but with consequences.
Two questions. How did you pick the 8 through 12 success range? Because 8 is not a 3 number.
It's not, but I was looking for the right right level of success. 9 through 12 is
not correct. Yeah. So actually, if you look at
under
Rob's
50%
probabilities, you've recreated Powered by the Apocalypse flat 2d6 rolls, almost within like a marginal percentage points. Yes. I've on your probability spreadsheet that I made for you, I put a box that shows the rolling a flat 2d6. And Powered by the Apocalypse, listeners, this is helpful information. If you roll a flat 2d6, failure 42% of the time, conditional success or complicated success 42% of the time, uncomplicated success 17% of the time. So you're looking at 60-40 success failure and a less than 20% uncomplicated success.
So 9 through 12 would be potentially more elegant, more symmetrical. It just that success rate felt a little bit too low, even with some mechanics. That is something that I want to tinker with in playtesting. It's also, this is like extremely mildly annoying, but because of the way that numbers work and math works, the midway point of a 3d6, like the absolute median is not 9, it's
10.5,
which doesn't matter, but it's it would be nice if things worked differently. But yeah, that's sort of the core part, and there's some things I have not figured out yet. Like I haven't figured out how attributes work. Right now I'm sort of or skills and abilities, like training. Right now I'm just sort of thinking that they add like a allow you to adjust it up 1 or down 1, but I'm not sure I'll keep that. I kind of like how everything is rolling dice at the moment, so I'd like to.
You can always go with like a cipher system kind of thing where your attributes are mostly important because of the pools of meta currency that they give you.
That's
they're not actually things you add or determine the number of dice.
Yeah. And the other sort of element of this is that there are, and I was inspired. I'll be honest, I was inspired by Daggerheart. I liked a lot of what they were doing with bringing in some like board game elements. So I've I've mathed out or you know theory crafted out some basically just like pools of I'm just thinking tokens that you can use and spend to do various things, and a couple of the critical ones that are used for character advancement are generated when you hit a triple or when you land on a 9. And these, indicate that you've been blessed, that you have divine providence, whatever. These will help you build your character and advance your faith.
Right. And you only get them by doing contested, challenged actions. So players are constantly seeking this.
That's the intent.
It's not too much to keep in mind that you're looking for triples and also a range on the numbers. I think it is weird that both over the range and under the range are just failures. They mean the same thing. I think it would be interesting if failures under the range described a certain type of failure and failures over the range described another type of failure. Like under the range is like, an internal failure of the character. Over the range is external, or it could be, it could be any number of things. Many systems have mechanics that differentiate these failures. Like, did you overshoot the mark or did you undershoot?
That's a great idea, Matt. I hadn't considered that. That's something that's going in there because that's easily done and can represent different types of failure. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah.
The other thing you have to be aware of is that if you add a advantage mechanic, your numbers get fucked. There's I think we all love the advantage mechanic. I stuck it in mine, but like 46 if you get to choose which die you re-roll, and which is, I'm assuming, the way you're doing it, or just adding another die and then choosing the 3 that you pick.
It's basically adding an additional die, yeah.
I think reduces chances of failure to like less than 10%, which may be what you want, but that is a pretty powerful reroll.
It is, and this is a thing that will have to be decided and written, but the using the heresy die will come with immense consequences for your character and for the narrative. It's something
if it's
I want to strongly discourage,
then maybe, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's not so if it's a mince, then it's not really a problem. Like if it's not a thing a character would do 3 times a session, then
no,
who cares, right? That's great.
Right. I think it's the kind of thing that a character might do 3 times ever in the life of the PC. Maybe not that dramatic. This is a thing that I have to figure out in playtesting, right? Because it is, if you could use this very often, it would make it trivial to succeed on most rolls. So it needs to come with a cost. I do want it to be tempting.
You use your big metal spiked D6, put it in the table, and
yeah.
Everyone goes ooh when someone dares touch the heresy die.
Okay. This is a thing that I think is very fun, but this is something I really need to get the balance right, because it needs to be tempting, but not something that people will use lightly. So that's the thing that needs to be mathed out.
I think you could consider, I think the you've got the percentages exactly right for like failure versus success, 40 to 60, and then success divided into conditional, unconditional, and critical or exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you change the range to actually fit the curve, so that a conditional success is 8 through 13, and an unconditional success is the mid numbers 10 through 11. You're no longer worried about rolling 9s or 12s. It's just triples. Then you could
interesting.
It would change the percentages, but it would make the failure success more logical. So
Yeah, and triples is a little less than
3%. If you can, that goes way up if you can change the facing of one die.
Right.
Because rolling doubles is quite
quite easy.
quite
Yeah.
not common, but way more likely. And then you get basically, you have like a 1 in 3 chance, or sorry, higher than that, almost 1 in 4 or a half chance of having a die that you can flip to make a triple.
Yeah. Oh, that would be okay. I gotta test this both ways too. Because one of the things I want to accomplish is, those exciting moments when you get to roll a big, you get an exciting outcome, right? And we talked about this in our dice mechanics episode, which is, this is what one of the things people like about D&D is rolling a 20 is very exciting. And that happens 5% of the time. And this is a teensy problem with bell curve systems, is that you succeed more often. You generally, your curve is better, but you get those dramatic results a lot less often. And I don't have a fix for this, but it is something that I'm always trying to tinker with.
The other thing, and this would make you want to consider going back to the drawing board, so I save this one for last, is that the idea of the bell curve, right, is that it allows you to add or subtract numbers. But when your goal is to hit the middle of the range, then that becomes strange.
Yes.
So if you just switched the success and failure to being high and low, and then the consequences or faith to being the special 3 numbers, right? So the other way you could approach this is the 2 things tell you 2 different things about your roll, right? The roll does more than one things. The number tells you success or fail, and the combination of 3s or multiples of 3s tells you the faith or the advantage, disadvantage, the yes and the yes but.
There was an early version of this that was something like that, and I like that. I also like the matching. I like, but I want to make sure it's not too complicated or not. Yeah, I don't know that it necessarily is. I also I tinkered with versions of this that did sort of like what you did, where they instead it was just blank dice with symbols, and you were looking for matches of certain types. And there may be a version like that. There's different ways to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish. What I've got here feels pretty close. I like it. It makes sense to me. This is why it needs play testing, right? Because it's intuitive. I can see the roles making sense to me. Whether or not this works out for other people is kind of up in the air.
Yeah. This is a game that requires a resolution chart that is in front of your players at all times, that most players will memorize within an hour, right?
Yeah. And this is something I like. I like this is what I like about Blades in the Dark. This is what I like about Year Zero, is what I like about certain Powered by the Apocalypse games. So that makes sense to me. There's tinkering to do. Matt, let's jump back to yours, because you've gone a little bit further than I have in terms of mechanics.
And I will say, just for our listeners, for testing these out, you can calculate probabilities. You can calculate measures of centricity. You can use any dice to help you with this, or Python, or whatever or a spreadsheet, whatever you're comfortable with. You can also play test this out by rolling dice, right? walk yourself through a typical situation, right? If you have like a character sheet that's made up, and like make these rolls and think about, what are the possibilities here? How does this feel to an individual person? You could sit there and roll the dice 20 or 100 times and be like, all right, if this was my sample of rolls from a given session, right? How would this feel? What would my options be? And so that's what I've done to help that, to get myself to the let's actually play a playtest game.
We've talked about this in other ways. Everybody's different, but when testing, an RPG, sometimes I like to literally take out a pencil and like make a character just to test it. And in the same way, I think it can be helpful, even if it's not strictly necessary, to literally roll some dice, to try to make sense of what you're working with. About pushing. So, sorry,
Yeah.
going back to Matt's system. Like we said, the math gets a lot better when you push. And I know that Matt has thought about it, but I'm still going to ask about it.
Yeah,
you said
sure.
that the resource for pushing is basically like your health pool. So are we talking, how often are your levelers going to be able to push per session, and how do they get that resource back? Can they get that resource back? Like, what's the balance on this?
Right. They have a pretty big pool at the moment to push, right? It's essentially the sum of their attributes is the pool. So they'll have a pool, somewhere between like 10 and 15 at the beginning of the game to push. So they have lots of opportunities to push the die. The problem is that pool is also used to soak damage or consequences, soak magical effects, do magical effects more often, so that the pool can be used for other things. Recovery is, the way recovery works is it's the end of the session, so it's a very narrativist, gamist recovery, where if players like spend the night or the day resting, they can recover a minor amount. But yeah, it is a very limited resource, but it is one that players start the game with in abundance.
When they run out of this resource, this vitality, is that death? Is this literally or figuratively their health pool?
Yeah, it is. It's not death, because this is sort of the vitality pool of mini games, where this represents your ability to avoid actual harm.
Got it.
Players can then soak harm that works pretty much in a Blades in the Dark style, where like you get hit, it's like gut stabbed or rattled, cursed, etc. And then the way that works is that that actually, if you take that instead of like in Blades of the Dark, where you this gives you a penalty to rolls, this gives you an extra die or 2 or 3, so you get better as you're at death's door, because I want my characters to try and sacrifice themselves for the greater good if they feel that is an appropriate and logical action. So I don't want them to enter a death spiral. And then, then if they take more, then they die.
Okay. Sorry, I was reminded of a different question that I had. So you made this note. It makes me think of Edge of Empire, of
the Genesis system.
Sorry.
Yeah,
just absolutely just blanking. Having the blank sides means something else. Have riders or penalties or something like that. I think you rejected this, but it's an interesting idea.
Right. In an early version, like the numbers on the blank side could be damage or another descriptor of the effect when added together. And the more successes you got, so if you got 1 success, it was all the blank sides added together. If you got 2, it was double the blank sides. If you got 3, it was triple the blank side, or the 2 through 5 sides. It turns out the math on that is that those all have the same meaning. Mathematically, they're very close together, so there's not a lot of benefit to especially at certain dice ranges, because as you get more successes, you're taking away the blank sides. It could always just be the actual math of the pool. So I rejected this fork in the design for two reasons. I found it was actually not pleasant to add up the dice. I know players love doing this for things like casting a fireball spell or whatever, but I don't. So it might be a fork I return to, but I enjoyed keeping the other dice essentially meaningless.
I mean, it also reminds me a bit of Imperial Assault, where there's and games like it, where there's additional symbols which allow you, they have conditions or activate abilities or so on and so forth. It's very board gamey. I don't know how well it works for like a TTRPG, but it's, could be interesting. Like one of the
So
dice faces allows for certain types of heroic actions or so on.
I think I was thinking something like that, and then I decided to keep it simple and just look for sixes or ones. And then, there are special talents and abilities players have, along with some basic ones that just let them spend extra successes over whatever the difficulty of the monster, an encounter, or creature is to do more things, which can include those special riders, right? Like spend a
Yeah,
dice to
I
disarm an opponent,
I
spend a
think
dice to throw an opponent back, spend a
this has
dice
the
to ask the GM another question about the lore you're investigating.
this has the um same effect basically, but yeah, it's simpler. You're just looking for successes, and this also feeds into the, I guess, one potential optional or other rule where they can take ones as well as sixes and voluntarily choose consequences. So I do think this, um, as written, is more elegant, makes more sense.
Yeah, I think the big choices right now is like, do I want to make the choice choose the ones or sixes, which will only come up when ones are higher than sixes on the dice pool, which is not very often? Or do I want to make and redo all my probability curves, make it where the choice is take just the sixes or take the sixes and ones? And then really make the succeed with consequence a more serious thing, because
Yeah.
failing with consequence right now is, I if it's in a crisis scene, the GM gets a token that they can spend to do another action, or deflect an attack or something like that, to make it actually, oh, this is a really big thing. Things get worse in a in a more narrative sense, right? A
Mm-hmm.
bigger picture thing, which would make succeeding with consequences just very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
um because you're doubling the potential successes.
Yeah.
So that would be like stepping back to an earlier point in design and going from there. But I might do that. I think, yeah, I think I gotta actually play test what I have
Yeah.
now before I go back to that. But that's something that really intrigues me, that adding them together.
I mean, that's interesting to me. I do agree that, yeah, maybe they playtest them both, but that's intriguing to me too.
One thing that we like about, I think, fiction first games is that success with consequence always comes on the players, whether they like it or not, right? It's usually a choice that's out of their hands. And I would be interested to see the sort of basically a binary system. The dice tell you whether you pass or fail. Of course, I have this option to push for a better chance to succeed. But having a game where you only succeed with consequences if you choose that
Mm.
is kind of satisfying, right? Because you've sort of said it. Well, you put yourself into this.
I like that too, and I think that, yeah, you take the risk or you take the consequence on purpose. Like you push yourself to accomplish more, knowing that it's going to cost you. I do think that's in some ways a bit more interesting than it's just a consequence of failure or not succeeding, or it's interesting in a different way.
Yeah. I think much in your Trinity system, much depends on not just the dice mechanics, but the meta currency and how it works, right? Can you only adjust a dice up or down by one? Can you re-roll a dice? Can you add to the total by one, which is essentially the same as adjusting a dice, except for the matching element? How hard is it to use the advantage dice? Is there ever a disadvantage dice? That kind of thing.
So I was trying not to get too into it, but there's three. So there's three primary stats with three related meta currencies, and one of them. So one of the primary stats allows you. It dictates how often you go per initiative round. So right now it's for each point you have in that, you basically get an action. The other one gives you a pool that you can use for rerolls. And then the third one I right now have for soaking damage or avoiding consequence in one way or another. So they're reasonably powerful, I believe. This is all going to have to be put to the test, but it's not something that you can do super often as I have written it. And it only allows for re-rolling a single die, which can be very powerful, but it is not the same thing as re-rolling all your die, and it gives you better chances, but does not automatically make you succeed. So, in a situation where a player has rolled, a 3, 3, and a 2, they're like, well, that's an 8, that's a conditional success, but like maybe I want to gamble for a 9 for a triple. And I think that's an interesting choice. And I think that it's not too powerful, but like you said, Matt, the math gets real wonky the more advantage mechanics that you add.
Right. One problem is that you're rolling 3 triples on a dice, on three dice is incredibly rare, right?
Yes.
It is. It's like rolling a 40 on a 1d40, to put it in perspective that I think everyone understands. It's not like rolling a natural 20.
Right.
And if you could, I think if you could adjust that to where you get to that rolling a natural 20 or like 10% of the time, somewhere in that 5 to 10% range, I think you'll be a lot happier.
And I'm sure you figured this out, but this is why I targeted 9s and triples as exceptional, because that puts it at almost 15%, which is high, right, but not astonishingly so. But that's maybe too high. I'm not super unhappy with it, where things are, but I'm struggling just a bit with getting both the theme and the sort of, this stupid, multiples of 3 Trinity thing that I've got going, getting it to match up with numbers that feel right. And there's a few different approaches that we talked about, and then some of your ideas may work better. I kind of need to test them all out, but that's the
other thing is the success being the middle range. Does that tie into the theme somehow? Is there like a thing in the game where characters are, trying to achieve some kind of balance or middle ground? Because, that could be a good, if there is, justification or matching of the narrative and an explanation for why aren't we just trying to roll high, or why aren't we just trying to roll low?
I mean, I initially did it because 9 is in the middle, and I liked, the idea of having a range because most systems we talk about are either high or low or successes or something like that. And I kind of liked, because some like war games have ranges that you are you're trying to land within. I thought
Yeah.
it was kind of like neat how it worked out, but I like the balance idea, and I may write that in there because that would sort of explain like why you additionally, in addition to the sort of like the gamist things that I've just described, a narrative reason why you're trying not to go too high or too low.
Yeah, I think if you change your ranges from 9 to 12, and in fact if you added something in your lore about how there was once 12 gods and then 9 or something like that, and then you get a if success is 9 through 12 or a triple, then actually the math works really well. You get 50% success, 50% failure. If you set conditionals as 9 and 12, you get or unconditionals, you essentially get 25 and 25 approximately. So,
well, that is very nice math. Okay, well, we now have more questions than answers, and have made little to no progress. But
no, the important thing is basically before this episode, we're already at a place where these could be presented to people, and they may fall apart, but that's part of the play testing process, right? The important thing is to not tinker too much before you get to your players. Tinker just the right amount, maybe an hour talking with a friend.
I mean, I'm joking. This was actually very helpful, and I liked doing it. And I agree with Matt. Like, you can spend your whole life tinkering with this shit, and there are, you should not. The mechanics,
better things to do.
They're
better
play
games, for example.
Play games. Write the other part of the game that's not about dice. There's a reason why a lot of very popular games have very simple dice mechanics, and that is both because they're easy to play, but also because that means you don't have to spend a lot of time as the game designer fiddling. And yeah, so this was fun, and I'm glad we did it. I'm gonna do some pushing some stuff around, but Matt's absolutely correct. Do not spend a lot of time on this, especially because I think this is one area where playtesting is even more useful. Like, you will learn how the dice mechanics interact with real people a lot faster than other parts of your game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. You'll quickly learn, like, I'll have a quick answer to that question about how much mental load decisions of pushing or keeping can be. You can only calculate the probabilities of how many times it comes up so often before it's just more useful to say, well, did you feel like this choice was interesting? Did it take you too long? You can observe people and say, did you enjoy rolling these dice or not? Did they frustrate you or they excite you? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and for example, I, as a player, I love this stuff. I love to push. I love to take risks. I love to possibly risk my character to do fun things. There are other people who are very conservative and will, hoard those resources, or may, without the right incentives, hoard those resources. And that's something you can only find out through playtesting.
Well, I like the way your game is set up, where there's no hoarding of resources, only acquisition of faith through violence.
That's the intent. We'll see how it works out. But I really, I knew you were working on leveler stuff. I like this iteration hack of year zero. I think to me, it's more interesting. And I love rolling big fistfuls of dice, so I'm automatically on board.
Cool. All right. Patreons, thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. As always, please let us know what you would like to hear more of. It's always very heartening to get people's like surveys and just like say, well, we just want to support the show. But you can also tell us what you would like to hear. That's fine too.
We really appreciate the support. I hope you enjoy listening to us. And yeah, we do always take suggestions, which we sometimes get to. We always try.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening, and keep rolling them dice.